House of EdTech, episode...
Episode 59 is not your episode, Mr. Nesi.
I thought we were taking over.
House of EdTech, episode 59 belongs to AJ Bianco
and Stacey Lindes. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I'm Stacey Lindes.
And I'm AJ Bianco.
We've taken over the House of EdTech. As you know, the House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education.
Our objectives still include discussing technology that is changing our classrooms and schools and sharing tools and tips you can hear about today and use tomorrow.
Today, we are talking to your host, Chris Nesi, to have him share his story.
The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way we teach and how our students learn.
In this episode, just like always, we have our EdTech thought, our EdTech recommendations, our House of EdTech VIP, and the House of EdTech host himself, Mr. Chris Nesi.
And of course, feedback from you is always important. So please, let Mr. Nesi know how awesome this episode was and how great of a job me and Stacey did. And you can always tweet out using the hashtag House of EdTech, or you can send a Vox to Mr. Nesi by using Voxer and actually typing in Mr. Nesi, or give him a call on his hotline, 732-903-4869.
So we're going to start with our House of EdTech thought.
And tonight, our EdTech thought is this: that teachers should be responsible for their own personalized learning. It's time to get out from district-owned PD and time to take professional learning into your own hands.
It's time to take responsibility for your learning and act like the professionals that we know we are. So many times we hear about how the district's PD isn't meeting our needs. It's either repetitive, it's redundant, or it's just not practical for what we're doing in our classrooms. And AJ and I are here to recommend to you avenues for your own personalized PD. None of this is going to be new if you're an avid listener of the House of EdTech. We're here to recommend Twitter, find your own PLN, grow your PLN, and reach out to them via the Twitterverse, or go to an ed camp or other tech conference that is local to you and free. Or you can go to a national conference. It might not be free, but the experience that you have there will be like no other. AJ, what other recommendations do you have?
I think one of the good ones is Voxer. If you're not on Voxer, I think it's a good thing to get on Voxer and find a group that you're comfortable with. There's different groups for different interests or different people that you can connect with, whether it's about podcasting or whether it's about sat chat or becoming an administration leader. There are so many different groups out there through Voxer that you can go to and hear different stories and ask different questions, and take your learning into your own hands and be responsible for what you want to learn about. Get out of the sit and get and start making some changes to how you teach.
Or you can just keep doing what you're already doing and listen to more podcasts like the House of EdTech. And join us on Sundays at 8:30 for Podcast PD, where we are sure to give you lots of recommendations on podcasts that will help you grow professionally and personally.
And that is our EdTech thought. And now, here is Stacey with our EdTech recommendation.
So, our EdTech recommendation is Kanbanchi. Now, I could be saying it wrong. I know Chris says Kanbanchi. He blames it on his New Jerseyness. However, I'm not really sure, but it's spelled Kanbanchi. It's an online tool for task management, project management, and collaboration. What I like about it is you're able to create note cards or pins. It's a nice hybrid of, for me, in my opinion, Google Keep and Google Classroom in its arrangement and user interface. You can assign tasks to certain people.
I like Kanbanchi. I think it has a great usefulness that we can continue to keep organized and have our notes right there in hand. And it's kind of like sharing a Google Doc, but it's different sections. It breaks down nicely into different charts and, I guess, tiles. We can color code them so we know what's important. I think it's really a useful tool, and I really recommend that people give it a shot.
It's a pretty neat planning tool. And that's our EdTech recommendation.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the featured content that you all been waiting for. Here it comes, Mr. Christopher J. Nesi. Chris, thank you for joining us in the House of EdTech, episode 59. How are you, my friend?
Hey, great to be here, AJ. This is a fantastic podcast you guys are putting together.
Thanks. We learned from the best.
Yeah, Dave Jackson's been awesome.
Dave is awesome.
That's too funny. So,
right,
Chris.
So let's get... Whoa, hey. Sorry, Stacey.
No, you first. I said you were going to ask the first question. It's all good.
All right, Chris. So put it on you right now. Tell us about your journey in the field of education. What was your starting point?
Your origin story, if you will.
My journey into education began when I was either a sophomore or a junior in high school. I was inspired to become a teacher because when I was first born, my dad was a teacher. He's one now, but when I was born, he was a teacher, high school math teacher, and he had to leave the profession that he loved because I wasn't cheap. So he had to make more money and leave the teaching profession and do some other things. He found his way back, but I always wanted to become a teacher initially because of him. And I had an English teacher in high school who I was very close with, who was the director of the plays that I was in. And I only had her for 1 year of English. She was somebody who, and I've told this to my mother, that if I didn't have my mom, this woman would be, I would pick her to be my mom. So these were two people who just had a lot of positive influence on me and inspired me, and I wanted to inspire people in a similar way.
Very cool. I learned something new about you right there. I had no idea you were in the theater at school.
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
It hasn't come up on the podcast at all. I'm not doing a theater podcast.
I know, but even in our daily conversations, that never came up.
Yeah, I was in the high school plays. I was in Hello, Dolly and Damn Yankees and Guys and Dolls.
So, Chris, why don't you give us a little taste from one of those shows?
Pick a show, and I will give you a little bit of whatever I can remember.
Throw a little something out there from Guys and Dolls.
That's what I was going to pick.
Yeah, I like Frank Sinatra.
Well, here is not Frank Sinatra, so here is a little Guys and Dolls. When you see a guy reach for stars in the sky, you can bet that he's doing it for some doll. Am I done?
Very nice, very nice.
It was beautiful.
So, with your love of theater, and I know at least when I was in high school, that was always the English teacher's responsibility. What made you pick social studies?
I initially went to school to become a math teacher, just like the original Mr. Nesi. 2 years into my undergraduate career, I had to make the tough decision of continue to take all the math classes twice and struggle to achieve my dream, or choose something else and achieve my dream for real, which was to teach and coach. So my next favorite subject was history.
It's a great change, if I had to say so.
Coming from one great social studies teacher that I know, yes.
What are your aspirations as you continue in this field of education? Where do you see yourself? What do you want to do? Where do you want to be?
As of right now, and I've made no bones about this in previous episodes, my goal is to continue to move into a position where I can teach, but I want to teach teachers, either as a technology facilitator, a PD coordinator. I want to help teachers become better teachers.
Cool. And what skills do you think you have that would make you successful in that role?
As I've said on many an interview, I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. I'm very much a people person. You guys would be able to vouch for me, and that's one of the reasons I wish I could bring you guys on interviews with me, because that would be really cool. But it's my people skills, the ability to take the complex and make it not complex, flatten the learning curve, not overwhelm people with information. That's really where I'm coming from with that.
And you know what? You say like we could vouch for you. I totally vouch for you on that one. In the year that I've known you, you've really pushed me to do things totally outside of my comfort zone. You work with people on the side. You coach them without having that title. But if that were your official title, any district would be lucky to have you to help grow their teachers and grow the learning for their students by proxy of their teachers. I think that would be amazing.
I appreciate that, and it means a lot coming from you.
Oh, thanks.
And when you say that I've pushed you out of your comfort zone, since we are doing a little hangout, Stacey is talking to me and conducting this conversation as she talks into, and it's not the same mic that I have, but it is a podcasting microphone with a windscreen. She's got earbuds. Earlier today, I helped her set up the mixer that she's using. So she went from 0 to the penthouse in less than 12 months.
I told you to give me 8.
And we sort of did that. AJ and I, we were pretty pushy.
Yes. But again, you did it in a way that wasn't off-putting and helped me feel comfortable spreading my wings. And I'm already someone who's pretty comfortable taking risks, but there are certain places where I know in myself I'll just stop. And you kind of said no. And kind of like the mother bird pushed me out of the nest.
I've never been considered the mama bird, but consider yourself pushed and protected still.
Thank you. So speaking of giving advice and helping teachers, what advice would you give to new teachers as they, grow into their profession?
I would talk to new teachers about confidence. They need to have confidence in the fact that they've come out of school, they've gone through 4 or 5 years of learning where they know their content. They know history, they know math, science, social studies, pick the subject, whatever the case may be, they know that stuff. Now that they have that first job, or maybe they're in their student teaching experience, they really need to develop what I consider to be the art of teaching. And that's the part you can't teach. You don't get that from Ed 101 or any education class. You don't learn that until you're standing at the door, the bell rings, and it's you and your students. And that can't be taught. Just kind of go with it. You have to be able to laugh at yourself. You have to not only come with plan A, you need to come with B through double Z on the old Excel spreadsheet. You have to be ready for anything.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I still remember my first day just sitting in the classroom going, okay, so I'm here. Now what do I do?
I got to be honest, though, I didn't get my teaching certification as an undergrad. I went post back to Caldwell. But I remember taking as many education courses as I could as an undergrad without being admitted to the program. So I got to do like the 25-hour field experience. And I remember, even being, 21, 22 years old, anytime I've ever walked into a school, I've conducted myself as if I was a full-time, tenure track teacher in terms of, how I interact with building staff, teachers, but in terms of like interacting with students, have always put my own spin on trying to make it personal and being somebody that kids could count on and trust.
I think that's some other great advice that new teachers would love to have.
And I've always advised too, like as I've encountered, student teachers in the different schools I've worked in, I've always kind of gone out of my way to let them know, hey, this is not just student teaching. This is a 16-week or a 14-week job interview. And it may not be to work here in this particular school, but the supervisor, the administrator, they know people. Maybe they can make a phone call to another school in the district we're in, or they know somebody somewhere. So I've always just tried to encourage and lift up people who want to do this for their career.
I think that's also sound advice for pre-service teachers. I know in the past few years, I've had my own student teacher, and I've seen a couple come through the schools that I've been at, and I think they don't know where they fit in, and a lot of times they don't want to overstep those imaginary boundaries. And I think I sometimes see that in newer teachers as well, especially first-year teachers. What advice do you have about that?
Well, actually, the comment I was going to make was I've said all I've said in this conversation, and we haven't even talked about technology or being a connected educator, because if you don't have any of these other things, being on Twitter doesn't mean jack squat. If you can't just simply cut it as a teacher, what's the point of being connected? You're not going to provide any value to anybody else, and you're not going to be capable of getting value from anybody else. So you have nothing to give, and you're not going to have the capacity to learn if you can't do it without something like Twitter. And yes, I just said that.
I was just going to say, did the House of EdTech just say it's not all about the tech?
I have said that from day one. It is not.
I know. And we talked about it on the episode where I was the guest.
Yeah, it's not about the tech. You know, if you take the laptops out of the classroom at any point in my career, the technology, I still have the same personality. You know, I'm still going to interact with the students the same way. You know, the tech makes what I do better, but it's not everything it's not all I am 100%. And nobody should be that way.
So, Chris, let's go with that thought for a second. Think back to your classroom. The first EdTech tool that you used that you're like, wow, this is going to change education and flip it on its head. What was that tool?
So we're talking probably like 2008 when I got out of student teaching, because there wasn't really an opportunity for me as a student teacher in the fall of 2007 to integrate tech. And the most I did there was that's where I set up my blog. I'm pretty sure it was something like Poll Everywhere. The kids had cell phones. I wanted to have responses in class and do voting. So I think my Google search was something to the effect of how do they vote in American Idol, or how are they doing like the live voting at, you know, those things where people could vote and give their answers or eliminate the choice on like who wants to be a millionaire. And so through some Google searches, I was able to come across, and I probably even searched free polling software and came across Poll Everywhere. So I think that was actually the first piece of tech I used where I was like, wow, because I saw the benefit of cell phones even at that early timeline. So yeah, Poll Everywhere.
I gotta be honest, I really thought you would have gone a different way with that one. I didn't think it'd be Poll Everywhere. That's there's nothing wrong with it. I still use it to this day, so I know it's a valuable tool. I thought it was gonna be something like that everybody be like, what is that?
That's what that was at the time when I said, hey, here's what I can do with cell phones in the classroom.
Yeah, think about that, AJ. That was 8 years ago.
No, I know. You're right. It is. But like, I remember like my first tool was like a smart board and like clickers. And I was like, okay, I'll try clickers.
The classroom I was in, it was a long-term middle school social studies position. And I had a smart board it was like an easel smart board where the projector was on one of those carts. So like I had to make sure the projector lined up with this board, and that the wire was connected from the projector in the computer to the board. It wasn't wireless. So
was it a Mimeo?
No, it was a smart board, but this was very early on in their existence. But that was my first physical piece of hardware. But in terms of like, again, like AJ, like you said, flipping education, getting the cell phones into the classroom and taking advantage of the fact that the kids had the devices.
Yeah, so you're in a new position, and you have those veteran teachers who like to do what they've always done. Technology is not something that interests them. Maybe it's something that they fear. What advice can you give to those teachers? What do you tell them to get people excited to try to make a small change?
I don't know if necessarily I'm looking to get them excited, but definitely looking to get people to change and try something different, you know, outside the box. I would certainly use this time of year to do that. And if I'm in a position to influence professional development or instruction as a coach, then I'm going to take advantage of that idea and that mindset and that way of thinking. I would probably attempt to, you know, like Stacey does, co-teach and work with a teacher, plan a lesson, either model it myself or do it right along with them.
You finally get your foot in the door of maybe that reluctant teacher. What is the first EdTech tool you use with that person?
I think I would want to show something that was engaging. So tools that do that. So for everybody with their pens and pencils out who's taking notes as they listen, something like Kahoot, Nearpod, something as simple as Poll Everywhere. Maybe integrating the fact that you can do Poll Everywhere inside of a Google Slides presentation. Maybe getting feedback. I know right now also in Google Classroom, they just added the ability to add polling questions. So maybe if you've always...
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's just so cool.
And
I like it.
If you guys read, I don't know if you read the blog post from Google about that, but they recommend 4 simple ways to use just that simple technology. Maybe you've done exit tickets, but you're actually having the kids fill out a slip of paper or maybe a Post-it note. Post a question in your Google Classroom. What did you learn today? Or did you learn? Yes or no? Do you understand? One of the other things they talked about was, and this is again just showing teachers the value of a simple change in the addition of just a little bit of technology, get kids doing self-assessment. Come up with 3 to 5 choices where kids assess themselves on how they think they're learning or not learning a particular topic in your class. So the change has to be simple. It's got to be something where, go figure, I can tell them about it today and they can use it tomorrow, or today, and it will give them value.
So with all these fantastic tools, I mean, like, Google, you have all these different, formative assessment tools and all these different things. Let me ask you, what negatives do you see from all these tools? And how can we address these negatives to turn them into positives for either struggling teachers or for the teachers who are excited about using these tools but are scared?
I'll tackle what I interpret to be two parts of that question. The first, the negative side, is the teacher who will rely on technology too much, who thinks they have to force technology into every day, every lesson, all the time, whether it's Chromebooks or cell phones, or, hey, we're going to play Kahoot every day. If you cram it down kids' throats, they're going to get bored, and you as the teacher are going to get bored because it's going to become the same old, same old. It's going to become your new, I do this all the time. And that can't be the case. There's still a place for pens and paper and pencils and scissors and glue and anything else that kids used before they were inundated with technology. So don't bombard them with technology for yourself or your kids. The second part, as I interpret it, how do you deal with teachers who are scared? My go-to line, and I believe it 100%, is you're not going to break it. You're not going to break Google. You're not going to break these tools. Sure, can you physically break a piece of hardware? Sure, but that's replaceable. But you're not going to break any of these websites. And a lot of teachers, the other aspect of fear is too many teachers fear not knowing and feeling embarrassed in front of their students if they don't know how to use a tool, and they're afraid to kind of open themselves up and be vulnerable to their kids and say, I don't know. And that's one of my favorite things to say to anybody. Since I'm 4, I don't know. I don't know. And you can't be afraid to say, I don't know, and learn right alongside your students. Doing that, you want to build community and a positive rapport with your kids, then learn with them. Don't talk to them or talk at them. So I think that covers the fear aspect.
Can you talk to me more about that? Like what strategy you would have for that? I'm going to give you a little scenario that I'm going to be dealing with next year. So we've been 1-to-1 in my district now for 2 years. And then we had a pilot program. So the kids who have had the devices the longest will be going to 8th grade next year, where their teachers have only had their devices for about 3 months. So what advice do you give to that 8th grade teacher where their students come in with 1 to maybe even 3 years of background?
I would stress to them how lucky they are to be in a position where they do have kids coming in with prior knowledge. They're coming in with knowledge. You don't have to take the time to teach the tech. And that's actually, to go back to what we were just doing before, a lot of teachers are afraid, how am I supposed to teach the kids how to use tech? They're lucky that they don't have to do that. They have an opportunity to learn and grow with their kids. Again, if I'm doing that session, I would probably have some of these, 7th, now soon to be 8th grade students come in and be a part of a workshop and model some of the tools that I'd be recommending that they use and try in the 8th grade curriculum across, all the content areas. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm actually taking notes. I don't know if you can see that. I just had
I thought you guys were taking pictures of this.
Yeah, so thank you for helping me with that piece for next year. I appreciate that. So we're going to move away from all of this EdTech stuff and talk to you a little bit about podcasting. At the start of this, AJ and I were talking about how we wouldn't be good podcasters because we are unsure of what to say each week. Where do you go for inspiration for your podcast?
Honestly, it just comes from inside. I mean, I use Evernote to kind of plan out these episodes where I'll have bullet points. Some things are scripted, and you guys have seen the Evernote doc that I use, like for the intro and things like that. But like the EdTech thought, I mean, that comes from being on Twitter, reading articles, frequenting a number of blogs, giving my own spin on it. Because, I mean, as you guys know, we've presented on this, the fact that we all bring different perspective and a different point of view to anything. Like, we all like the same things in EdTech, but if it was AJ's House of EdTech or Stacey's House of Tech, it would be 3 different podcasts.
How do you find time to create your podcasts?
My wife has sleep trained Miles and Colton. Caitlin is also a fan of 9 to 10 hours of sleep, so she's also in bed by 8, 8:30, 9 is a late night for her.
Chris, what do you wish about podcasting that could be better or different?
I wish I knew the name of every person who listened to this show. Like, I would love to know everybody who listens to my show.
What would you do with that information?
I was just going to ask the same question.
What would I do with that information? I would forge positive relationships, and I would love to know people who listen. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I wish I got more feedback. I wish there were more, people who reached out on Voxer or commented on the show notes on the blog, or even on Twitter. I wish I knew everybody who listened.
That's kind of an interesting answer, because I'm thinking I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I don't necessarily give a lot of feedback. And I know from listening to you and almost everybody that they ask for it almost every week.
I would love to be able to play 4 or 5 Voxer messages and answer questions, or just say, hey, this is some great feedback I got from AJ, and here's AJ's thoughts on an episode that already happened. Like, I would love to add that to the show. But
do you think it's different for other people? Like, it's like listening to the radio. They never really call into a radio show. I'm like, hey, I really like your podcast. I really like what you're having to say. And you think just people are listening on the go because, quick fix, want to hear about this, and they're on to the next thing.
We're totally off base here, but I just remember writing to authors when I was a little kid. I think for you and other podcast hosts, I think the key to it, or the reason that you would even want that contact and interaction, is because it makes you a better show host, that you're creating content then that is meaningful for your audience. Is that what you're getting at?
I would say that's part of it. If nobody listened to the House of EdTech, I would still do the show. I would still produce an audio file every 2 weeks and put it out there for people to listen to.
How can educators and students use podcasts in their classroom, whether it's this one or the most popular ones that we continue to hear about, like Serial? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the goal of a podcast, and I take this from my idol, Dave Jackson, is that a podcast will make you think, laugh, cry, or do something, basically. So if you want something authentic for your kids, then you can expose them to podcast content that will force them into one of those categories or multiple categories. That could just be from consuming something like Serial. Say you're teaching, an AP government class, and you're covering, courts and trials and, procedure like that. Serial is a great podcast to kind of get them involved in something that's definitely mainstream and popular. That's the springboard to other more indie style podcasts that could cover similar content. There's video podcasting where you can use that as a vehicle to get your students creating content. And I don't think there's anything more authentic than creating something that you could take ownership of. Personally, I think too many people just pay that a lot of lip service. People will talk about, podcasting or creating videos or, pick the creative thing, but they don't actually go to that next place and empower their students to create. Now, I'm not saying that every teacher needs to start a YouTube channel or have their own podcast, but if you want your students to do it and learn and grow, you've got to kind of do it along with them.
See, now, why not, though? Why shouldn't a teacher start doing that? I think it would be amazing to have, if not every classroom, if maybe certain subjects in different schools, start their own podcast or start their own YouTube channels to really tell their story.
I can't give you a reason why they shouldn't. That there is no good reason why that should not be happening. The reason why it doesn't, people are afraid. Administrators are afraid to empower teachers. Teachers are afraid to empower students.
And that fear of this in particular would really make their school come to life and show people that this is what we're doing and this is why our kids go to school every day.
All right. So say there's a teacher who is willing to take that leap and, risk it all, go outside of their comfort zone. What is an easy entry point for a teacher who wants to create a podcast like yours, where they are the person creating the content, or they want to create a podcast with their students?
I would say the entry point, and let's take it like we do with most things in our schools and education, we have $0 to spend. So if you have $0 to spend, then just use the laptops in your school and get yourself Audacity, record, just hit record. We've talked about that endlessly. Just hit record, go to YouTube. And if it's blocked, then you know what? When you're at home, watch a YouTube video, download it to your thumb drive and bring it in and be able to show it to your kids that way. Find a way and teach your kids, teach yourself how to do some basic audio editing. You just go to YouTube and say how to use Audacity. You will find hundreds of hours of content on how to do basic audio editing. And then you can simply, you don't want to shell out money for hosting, that's fine. Put it on Google Drive. I don't like to recommend, but you can go to free sites. You could experiment with SoundCloud. Don't build your house there, but or use something like Podbean or Podomatic. There are places you can go if you just want to dip your toe in the water to create content. Or if you want, take that audio file you create, make it a video, put it on YouTube. Or if you want to create video content, last time I checked, YouTube doesn't charge you for hosting your videos there. Use YouTube. If you're in a place where YouTube is blocked, you know what? Then maybe ask for permission or ask for forgiveness. I leave that up to you. I'm not a lawyer. Do an unlisted YouTube video. Talk to your administrators about the benefits. If you're learning this from me in this podcast, play them the podcast. Send them to me if they have questions or concerns. If this is the part that's frustrating, and I know that comes across in my tone and my voice, but I also hope that people understand the passion I have for this topic. I don't have the answer. They're just recommendations and just things you can try and do. Ultimately, you might get shut down, but don't lose the desire, because you may be in a position one day where you've either changed schools or maybe the people who make those decisions, they're different. And then the decisions and the choices and what you're allowed to and not allowed to do will be different. But if you have that passion, ultimately, don't lose your passion for wanting to try those things. Do as much as you can with what you're given.
Good answer.
I appreciate that, Chris. I think that the desire and the passion is something that people have to continue to have, even if they get shut down one time. Because you could imagine if we lost that passion, educators, how many times we've heard no, no, no. None of this would be going on. This connected educator stuff would not be happening. These podcasts would not be happening. It's the passion that we need to have. So I appreciate that answer.
And just to expand just a little bit more, where I'm at now doing in-school suspension, I just passed my 4-year anniversary in a non-tenured position. So I've been there 4 years and a day. So I'm non-tenured. And over the last 4 years, I have built myself up as and really developed this persona and this image I have with my colleagues as being the tech guy that they can come to. There's not a person in my building who wouldn't tell you, oh, you have a tech problem? Go see Nesi. Go see Mr. Nesi. Go see the professor, But that took time, and I didn't let the position I'm in and what I get paid to do stop me from developing and growing my passion for what I want to do.
And see, I think that's where the natural coaching you comes into play. And that was going to be what I said after your answer about, podcasting. If you're stuck, do what I did and, reach out to you and say, hey, I'm not quite getting this. And can you take a look at it? And I know you're there. And, for people who don't know you well, I know that you're almost always willing to help anybody. You
have to have trust. You have to feel comfortable. You have to feel safe. Again, it's all the same things we want our kids to experience. And I don't forget that as an adult who wants to teach adults and work with adults. That's also a vital quality. All right, Chris, I think we have picked your brain long enough. We thank you for letting us, A, take over your show, and B, being our very special guest. AJ and I truly appreciate it. And I, again, as I said at the top, I truly appreciate you guys breaking into the House of EdTech and doing the episode and helping me to create something that I haven't done but was interested in doing, and being a guest on my own show without me talking to myself.
And we'll make sure we don't touch anything, and we'll lock up before we leave.
Awesome. So enjoy the rest of this episode with AJ and Stacey. See you later, Chris.
Get out of here, Chris.
All right, we've got control now, AJ.
Let's go. And ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for, the House of EdTech VIP. And this episode's VIP is Jamie Bianco. Jamie is a mom to two amazing and, I must say, adorable boys. She is a middle school math teacher for the Hillsdale Public Schools in Bergen County, New Jersey. She's been teaching for about 12 years now. She has taken the role of teacher leader in her school by delivering PD to her staff and working with teachers as they learn how to incorporate GAF into their classrooms. And Jamie is tonight's VIP. And if you'd like to connect with Jamie as she's building her Twitter presence, please feel free to contact her at jbianco4. That's JBIANCO and the number 4. And Jamie, congratulations. You are the House of EdTech VIP.
So that's going to do it for this episode of House of EdTech.
Thank you to our sponsor, Grammarly. Go to chrisnesi.com/Grammarly. And thank you, Grammarly, for supporting us this episode.
Keep the conversation going and visit the show's website, chrisnesi.com/59.
The show notes for this episode will contain all the links and information shared today by everyone that has participated.
And if you didn't get it from our conversation with him earlier, Chris would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the information and resources shared in this episode, as well as the other episodes he's recorded.
Check out chrisnesi.com, click Share Feedback. That will give you Chris's email and all the ways to connect with him. Fastest way and his favorite way is on Twitter at Mr. Nesi. And always, please feel free to use the hashtag House of EdTech.
If you enjoy the House of EdTech, tell somebody. Word of mouth is the best way to share great podcasts you love. Rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Your rating and honest review will keep the House of EdTech front and center for others to discover and enjoy. You too can also show your support through Patreon. Go to chrisnesi.com/awesome.
On the next episode of House of EdTech, Chris will be back, unfortunately, in his hosting chair as he will be speaking with fellow podcaster and education influencer Jennifer Gonzalez from Cult of Pedagogy.
Yay!
Hey, Jennifer, that's right. She's awesome. If you're not listening to that show, you better.
Yep.
Episode 60 will be released on May 8th, 2016.
Until next time, thanks for joining us, and remember,
using technology isn't difficult.
Just give it a try.
Hit the music, Chris.
Ba-da, 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 ba-da. Hey, by the way, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at iRunTech. Or you can go to my website, iruntech.me. AJ, where can our listeners find you?
Find me on Twitter at AJBianco.
And
at ajbianco.me.
Fantastic.
Fantabulous.
Way past my bedtime, so Chris, cut that out.
Information and resources.
You skipped it.
What do you mean? You just said that.
This episode.
You just said that.
I did not.
You did. You said that with the chrisnesi.com 59.
Yeah, and then after that it says...
Why don't we start the closing one more time so it doesn't sound ridiculous?
I think it would be funnier if this is exactly what it sounds like.
No, this should be the bloopers, because I'm sure Chris is going to make a blooper reel. When you think about your podcast, and who do you look toward for inspiration? Chris, when we think about your podcast, who do you look toward for podcasting inspiration? God damn it, I'm glad to watch you.
Take a breath, take a break, come at it again from the other side.
I remember the first time we all met, it was like, hi, Chris. I was like, hey, Chris. She's like, hey, Mr. Nesi. I'm like, Mr. Nesi? Like, what are we, in school?
I don't know why. It was just weird. You were just AJ.
That's all.
Chris has always been like Mr. Nesi.
That's what I am. I'm just AJ. Well, at least I wasn't just that guy.
The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.